Yes. Teacher Adam, just a microphone check. Are you able to hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Perfect.
Mm.
Perfect. Yes, we
Mm.
want to welcome all the schools that have joined this session. Thank you so much for joining. Our facilitator is already on the call. I know some of you have quite a number of questions. We shall have all those questions put in the chat, and our facilitator, Teacher Adam, will be able to respond to all your questions. Yes, so Teacher Adam, I think we are good to start.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaziva and the Holistic Learning Platform for organizing this such a wonderful session. I also thank everyone who has endeavored to come through, and that I'm sure together we shall make it a better session. My name is Adam Navende, and this session has been organized and planned by Holistic E-Learning Platform. I'm a teacher of biology, and I will be taking her through the A level, mainly the senior 6 or the old curriculum, where we are going to have our last born of the candidates sitting their exams this year. If it all goes plan, we know they must be the last, and we pray that they all make it a success. Mainly, this session it was planned referring to the previous performance of biology, where we have been having staggering numbers, more so in the performance for the numbers which have always been listed for the A's and B's, and of course scoring highest in the failing part. So I really thank Mr. Kazva and the Holistic E-Learning Platform for organizing this, and I always acknowledge and appreciate you for the wonderful efforts you're doing towards making learning accessible by all learners in the world, not only Uganda, not only a particular part. So I will, because of the purpose of time, which is organized, I might not be able to take her through all the papers, paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. Like we all know so well that for biology, we mainly have we mainly have 3 papers. That is paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. So usually paper 1 and paper 2 are theory papers, and then paper 3 is the practical paper. The paper 1 and paper 2 are like theory, like I said, then paper 3 is the practical paper, which we might handle next time. So for today, I will only be taking us through the theory part, and we shall try to mainly talk about paper 2. So before we can progress, we shall start with the main things, because it is very important to know what must you cover as a learner. Just a moment. Okay, I hope you can still see my screen. Please, do you still see my screen? You can just type in the chat box there if you can still see my screen. All right, so we can continue. I hope you can all see my screen. So that's the main breakdown of the biology paper. We have mainly 3 parts, and these ones are equally seen. So we mainly have the 3 parts. Sorry, I was a bit of having a technical challenge here, so I fixed it finally. That's why I was asking if you can see my screen or not. So we mainly have the, okay, we can't hear anything. Sorry about that. I hope you can now hear me. Okay, so, all right, thank you. So we mainly have the three divisions under the biology paper, mainly paper 1 and paper 2. So the first part is the cell processes. And these are the topics that are under this. We have cell biology. We have the diversity of cells and tissues, the one you commonly call histology. We have the cell physiology, the starting bit of transport across the cell membrane. And then we have respiration or tissue respiration specifically. And then the second part is the biochemistry. This one starts with the chemicals of life, transport, nutrition, both in plants and animals. Then we have homeostasis, chemistry, and this one has topics like ecology, levels of organization and diversity. We have levels of organization and diversity of life. We have coordination, support and locomotion, reproduction, growth and development, classical genetics. Then we have population genetics and evolution. Now, it is important as a student, usually what can make most learners fail is some person can only focus in a particular area. For example, a person only focuses in cell processes, meaning in that case, you're only going to get about 33% of the scores in such a paper. Therefore, you'll have understood only a specific part of the biology, but you've not mastered all of them. In such a case, it means that you're going to only score only about 33% because usually all these sections are balanced in a specific paper. So you realize that you'll only end up with only 33% of that section. So the purpose as to why I came up with this was to let you, to make you aware that when you're revising, you must touch all those parts of the biology. And at the end, I've put here that note that balance plant and animal biology while revising. In this case, I will refer to a question in 2014. It was a paper 2 question, section B, where they asked for why there is need for transport in living organisms. In such a case, should the learner only go and put why there is need for transport, let's say for example in only animals, then in that case, out of the 20 marks, you will only be going to score some part of the marks. Why? You put the correct answers relating with transport in animals, but you've forgotten other kingdoms. You have forgotten the plant kingdom, you have forgotten the protoctista, you have forgotten the amoeba, the fungi and the monera. So you realize that much as you have put correct answers, you've only zeroed down to one kingdom. And that one can make you lose marks. Why? Because you put correct answers, but only in a specific kingdom. So it is important to always revise while bearing in mind that all these things are needed, or all these parts are needed for you to pass a biology paper. So another thing to note is, like I've put it clearly, when we are revising, let's always make sure that we touch all those parts when we are revising. And secondly, when you're also revising, try to balance plant and animal biology, or even the other kingdoms where a question arises that is open and doesn't specify a particular kingdom. Also to note is, usually when they are setting standard papers of biology, they often have to balance from all the three parts of the biology, but also secondly, they'll also mix all kingdoms, balancing plant and and animal. So should you only focus on plant or botany and you forget zoology or animals, then you might end up only scoring half of the marks in that particular paper. So the importance of me organizing this was, you must be able to balance all those parts when you're revising or preparing for a particular exam. So I hope we can put that right for now. Secondly, we have the key problem, and this is the most important at this rate. So usually the advanced level candidates often never prepare optimally well for theory and merely do dry run. And of course, that's what usually most learners do. All of them are having the phobia that biology is so wide. Maybe I've never scored such a point in biology. So majority of them simply just prepare, they go and read the biology simply because they have the next paper, or simply because they have been put in prep and they are being supervised. So majority of them don't prepare within them intrinsically, like a person said, I'm preparing for this biology paper and this is what I must cover. Most of them simply read through, usually claiming that the content is too much, and therefore they really don't cater for themselves in terms of preparation. So this accounts for the high failure rates, as candidates also cannot present information to the needs of the question. So majority of them simply answer to satisfy themselves. And that's why sometimes a person shall answer according to what they have understood. For example, they have asked for how, let's say, how salts or explain the transport of materials across the cell membrane. So a person might only answer in relation to phospholipid bilayer, simply because it's what they know, and therefore they'll forget all other parts through the vesicles, through the transmembrane proteins, all that, and they don't, simply because of the little they know, and they also just take it that the subject is hard, so they don't prepare optimally well to pass such papers. Another point is candidates often have issues on question selection for section B. Usually most learners have issues with selecting the questions for section B, the 60% of the question, of the question paper. And also, I don't believe you. How can you choose the question that you're going to fail? We are going to understand how to choose the question such that we can prepare optimally well in this session as we go on. Sorry, I just put it there that you can't choose a question that you're going to fail, really. And usually that's what most learners do, simply because they don't prepare so well. And the moment they see something they think they read, they obviously hurry to choose such a question, yet they don't have enough points to make them pass that question. The third thing is most candidates have insufficient stroke no idea on how to properly describe graphs for section A. Yet this is purely a low order question for all to attempt. Usually there are many issues with answering section A, yet almost half of that question is just out of the 40 marks, 20 marks simply don't call for any biological knowledge about how to answer that. Simply they call for analysis. So most of the learners have a phobia for that question and they lose most of the free marks which they must get to help them get the most of the marks from that paper. So we're also going to learn how to handle that when we are doing the paper 2. And then the greatest of the problem is information overload. Now, much as we said learners don't prepare so well, we also have this kind of learners who try to go so deep into the subject. A person has got, can revise and compare all the books, the Bessel books, the functional approach. We have the understanding biology. We have the, okay, I'll first try to disable the annotation tool. Okay. So, okay, thank you. So usually there is a problem of information overload where learners have a lot of knowledge from the Bessel books, the functional approach, the understanding biology, the biological science, the Michael Kent's, all those books. Usually learners have a lot of that information, and to the extent that they fail to get what is needed for a particular question. Now, I'm not saying that we should not revise those books, but anytime, usually I advise learners that when you're revising, start by the classwork. If you don't understand well, use those books as reference books in a way that today you've tried to understand how the sodium potassium pump works. You're using a teacher's notes, but then you fail to understand the teacher's notes. So you try to revise it in Bessel books like the biological science, understanding biology, and others. Now, when you've failed from there, that's where you'll get a better print or blueprint of how the sodium potassium pump works. Then after you consulting there, check, can you now attempt a question maybe from the question banks or the yellow notes or mock papers and others. So it is a bit of when usually most learners make a mistake by starting from the other side. So they start from BS, biological science, and by the time they reach a teacher's notes, the teacher's notes are too dilute for them. So what happens when they reach exam, they have asked a question which requires like 4 marks, but then a person can't write that in, let's say, 4 lines. They'll have to go along several paths such that a person writes, then a question which required the 4 lines, a person has gone up to 10, and the points are very thin, like a person can't read this, they are not flowing. So that one can make a particular learner fail. So on this, I will say the main Quran or Bible or the holy book for biology is the updated syllabus book provided by the National Curriculum Development Center. And usually, of course, the NCDC advises teachers to get the notes basing on the book. So, and like we are much aware, these books, majority of them are not even African made, but majority of them are imported from UK or the Europe and US. Sometimes they may not contextualize with the curriculum here. There are some things they cut off because of the absolute content and maybe some overlaps. So sometimes always work in line with your subject teacher to see if a particular area is important or not. So like, I'm not saying we should not revise those books, because when reach, oh, sorry, I speak a bit louder. I thought that I was speaking a bit loud already. Maybe I'll try, please. So lastly, the take-home message is when you're revising, make sure that you have your organized notes, revise something in the book, and then should you not understand it properly well, okay, I'll enlarge it, please. Okay, I think that is better now. So I was saying, start by your notes. Then should you fail to understand a particular concept in your notes, then that's when you refer to the Beso book. And then when you get the idea there from the Beso book, now check, can you answer a question from the question bank from the previous years? Okay. That by doing that, you'll better understand the content and the concepts. So we have the wrong analogy that biology is so detailed that it is 100% coverage, can never be realized. So of course that is the common analogy, that biology is so detailed. However, for this reason, I shall add the syllabus such that as you chase your dream of delving into this life science, you plan just after completing your last UCE paper. So usually, I always believe for you to take a particular subject, it must be part of your dream. And the best is always preparing. It is so wrong to say that this content is too wide for this level, because the curriculum developers clearly know why they designed it in the 6 terms. So the whole thing is trying to work within and then make sure that you touch all topics. Yeah, to teachers, of course, it is a bit disturbing when a learner goes for a final exam when they have not touched some parts of the subject. That one builds bias in them. And even if that topic might not be widely set, but they will go there when they have bias. And of course, it can, of course, negatively impact them. But the best is always, I've given you the breakdown of, that's why I began from up giving you what you must cover. As a learner, please move an extra step of being the best. Like the reason as to why you are attending this is to see, there are many people who are also not attending and they are missing out on this information. So just like you are doing here, to take an extra step to attend, also do an extra step to find for yourself whatever we must cover for our part. So what is the solution to this problem? Paper 2 requires comprehension. It doesn't simply mean you should do dry run. I know there are some people who can even revise a quarter of a topic in a day or during one preparation of 2 hours during evening prep. Now, that one might not work for biology. For biology, you can actually revise one page, but if you comprehend it well, you might not need more time to revise it. So what do I mean? Never cross to the next page when you've not understood what is on the previous page. So always make a summary, try to highlight. I expect your book to be having a lot of highlights in the margins. You've underlined the key points such that when you're revising, you make it easy for yourself. Then there are also basic biology and all necessary facts. So biology requires the basic biology, paper 2 requires the basic biology. That's why I told that for paper 2, also section 8 is just purely common answer question, analysis. Simply, they don't require any biology. And some basic biology, which you must know, the topics we learn in senior 5, the cell structure, the cell physiology, those are the genetics, those are the basic biology that we must be having for us to make this subject so easy for us. So for this, you must be knowing the senior 5 topics. Please try to comprehend a particular question. Read it before, for any word. I usually like saying that for you read, anytime you see a question mark or a full stop or a comma or any mark, grammatical mark, please stop and ask yourself 2 questions. How? Why? When you have not answered them, then don't proceed to the next one. So this another thing is paper 2 needs a different method of revision for a better performance. I think I've already hinted on that. Said don't just do dry run. Don't be this person who revises just like you're reading newspapers. Before you cross to the next page, make sure that the work on the previous page has been clearly understood and comprehended. There is also need to balance plant and the animal biology. I think I've already hinted on that. And then please buy the updated question bank the first time you join Form 5. I know because of different circumstances and the divide that we have in our country, some learner here might not have accessed the question bank. But on this note, I would request you to have at least a copy for yourself. I will not expect you to be revising, even if it is for 1 hour. Let's say you're revising let's say you're revising the Hardy-Weinberg principle, and then you just close the books and move away without consulting the question bank or trying out any question is that particular section of revision. That one shall be a very wrong idea. So the best is, after you're revising a particular part, please check from your question bank. Can you attempt such questions that are encompassing what you've revised that evening or that morning? And if you can't do them, then please, it means that you did nothing. You should sit and revise. So, and also buy a book where you will use notes to answer questions. Usually I tell my students that it is wrong to, I'm not like, no, I'm not misguiding you on buying solution books, but I usually advise my learners that please, why should you buy a solution book? The moment you come in senior 5, buy yourself 5 books. I'm assuming you're doing BCM. So buy yourself a book, new book, they require for biology, they require for chemistry, they require for mathematics, they require for sub-math, then another one for GP. For sub-computer, then GP. For biology, go year by year. For each topic you're reading, let's say senior 5, the first topics are cell structure. You've learned about cell structure that time. Why can't you, today the teacher was teaching about the structure of the cell membrane by the fluid mosaic model. Why can't you try to look for questions on the structure of the cell membrane and then you answer them? By the time you reach senior 6, you'll have made a lot of notes such that rush hour when you're going for your final paper, You don't have to go again through revising the whole notes. You've already brought Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we can proceed. Sorry about that. Yeah, it was my network which was disturbing. Now we can go on. So thank you. So we were still breaking down this, and I was coming to the end of this. So I said I had given guidance on how we can do it. That you start by revising your notes, and then try out question from the question bank. If you find some part still hard for you, then that is when you can refer to the BESO book or the biological science or anything else. Of course, we said that you should also work in line with your subject teacher. So I'll proceed to the next part. Okay. So for excellence in this paper 2, P530 stroke 2, I've given a breakdown of what happens in this paper. So it requires two major things. One, consolidated biology. You must be having facts of biology. And we said those facts are built from senior 5, the basics of biology, cell structure, cell physiology, and then genetics, or the one you start from chromosome concept. And then you also it needs correct answering in terms of presentation standards at marking level in UNEP stroke USCE. So for you to score perfectly in this, you need to have consolidated biology, but you should also know the tactics of answering to the standard for you to get the best of this paper. So for excellent, I gave you, I based on Mr. Dongshema and Matua's strategy. I said for you to score very well in this paper, for you to be excellent, you need good marks in section A. Remember, I said section A doesn't need a lot of biology as such. So meaning it is possible for you to score above 30 here in this section. So if you score at least above 34 in this section, then trust me, you are heading towards the positive. And at least score at least 14, 14 plus for each question out of 20 for the 3 questions in the section B. And this one shall help put you very high. Also, when you're presenting the answers, please be precise and logical. Like in biology, it's simply based on precision so much. Why? Because this is a life science. You are going to save lives. And if you're this doctor who is so lengthy in the way you handle your things, then it means you'll save very few lives and all of them shall be lost, or majority of them. So meaning, you should be precise. That's why in biology it is possible that a question you have which can give you 20 marks, you can even answer it just on halfway the paper. Mainly by simply putting always the clear points that are necessary and leaving out the irrelevancies. So in biology, you must be logical in the way that you should answer with a lot of precision or with a lot of ease. But also with the easiness you're writing your answers, they should not lose the strength of the points. That's why I'm saying that you must answer it with a lot of precision, but still logically. So NB section A is the backbone of paper 2. Should you misfire on section A, please, it will be hard for you to bounce back in section B. Let's always take our section A as the one which should give us the marks, and then we struggle in the other parts. So a candidate must also pass it highly for a better grade. Just like I say there that you must score 32, 34 plus, or at least score above 30. It is still possible to do it. So you can make that happen, I'm very sure. Let's go to section B. Now, for section B, unlike section A, section B is the most demanding. Why? Because remember I said section A simply needs it doesn't need a lot of biology. It needs basic biology. We shall not be having many questions of explain. Majority of them shall be needing data analysis. But for section B, it is a bit more demanding. And here, the question is set may not be direct as such. That's why you might find you'll find some questions that are a bit complex in this particular part, unlike section A where it simply requires analysis. So the most biggest problem in section B is wrong question approach. And this is the main challenge faced by the candidates at UNEB level. Majority of you try to answer questions depending on the way you understand them, not what actually the question requires of you. You often read the question only once, and then before even comprehending the question to see what is needed of you, you simply rush to answer. So the best idea is always spend a lot of time before you attempt such questions. Read the question, like we agree to say that for anywhere you see a question, any punctuation mark, first stop and ask yourself why, how. Not until you have answered those questions, then don't proceed with that particular question. Secondly, candidates are therefore advised to read the questions carefully and organize their answers, i.e., plan what right, present them logically and precisely, illustrating with well-labeled diagrams where necessary. The best idea on how to answer such questions is always draw a content map. A content map is when they ask that describe, let's say they have asked that describe the formation of the mRNA in the nucleus of a cell. First draw, what do you think is needed of me? This is protein synthesis. At this stage, what starts it? Then you start by this. How many enzymes are in this? You list them. Which processes might take place here? You list them. What is going to happen to the mRNA after it being made? You'll have to ask yourself, have I really put what is necessary? Okay. And if you've not put what is necessary, then you'll have to check to confirm if you've put all the marking points. But if you're just simply doing dry run, you read the question once, and then you're simply running through very fast, that one might not help. You'll end up much as you have the content, you might, in the first way you're writing, you might write the content, the work, and you miss out on the marking points. Therefore, meaning you won't score perfectly, like the way the other person who has organized the content can score. So a candidate is also encouraged to read all the 5 questions in section B. Majority of the learners, after reading, maybe towards the paper, had read something on population genetics. Then sees the question of population genetics. Automatically, they rush to answer it. Maybe was reading something on coordination in plants, photoperiodism. The moment they find that question, they simply rush to answer it. Yet, you must first read all the 5 questions. Take time to analyze. This question is having 2 parts. Maybe first part is having 8 marks, second part is having 12. But you know very well this first part has 8, and well, you can score at least the majority of the marks. But second part has 12 marks. However, you're not very familiar with it. Then you balance. Go to the next question. Maybe the next question is a particular part having 20 marks block. But then in that question, you're not having content. Maybe that question is requiring you to write steps of, steps of protein synthesis. You don't have the content, you're missing out on some steps. Then why should you go for that question? In most cases, it is advisable, unless you've really prepared for that question. Those block questions are sometimes not advisable to be attempted, more so if you're lacking on that particular concept. Please, anytime you attempt a question in section B, first try to logically think how many possible marks you can obtain from such a question before you choose to take it. However, candidates are advised to maximize marks and avoid losing marks. I think that one is important. For a question which you're familiar with, you've landed on this question, evolution and population genetics. You really, let's say it is polymorphism, and you have really comprehended it so well, it is your part that you understand best. Make sure that you don't lose any mark on such a question, such that as you reach those questions that you might struggle at, when you're already sure of your marks in the previous question. So understand the instructions used in the question. Please, we are going to break down these instructions and we understand what they need of us anytime they have been put. And then understand the magical words, stroke terms used in the instruction. And this is where most people lose it. They might simply, like we said, because someone has read a particular question, they want to run by it, sometimes which is very wrong. Please, always try to analyze. I always like saying that please don't go and attempt questions. Go and look for marks. That is the most important. Let's go to the next part, which is choice of questions. For choice of questions, it depends on action verb used in the question statement. I think I've already talked about how to choose a question. Choose the question that you're going to pass. Don't choose a question that you're going to fail. Okay? So we have marks allocated. And I clearly say that if you're not contented enough, don't take block questions that you're doubting. Those questions of 20 marks, if you see you're still lacking on some content, if that question requires steps, please, if you're lacking on any content, don't dare. Look for questions that you can attempt perfectly. And then sequence, if any, and extra phrases used. So there is sequence. I say that for questions which have one sequence or one part, and you're not sure about them, you better leave them. I always advise you to take questions which are having several sequences, meaning they have A, B, C. And please, at least don't attempt a question whereby out of the 20 marks, you can't score above average. That's why we said you must first be logical when you're attempting such questions. So a candidate should answer a question when she or he is, when he or she is sure of what is required and has the information needed. That's the only time you are supposed to answer. But if you're not sure of some question, don't rush to answer it. Plan for what right in the 3 selected questions before you commit yourself to avoid off and on works. Remember, we said that should you not plan for a particular question much as you knew it, you have not done any content map, you will still miss out on important marking points. But if you plan and then you write the key points or the map of the content map of what is required of that question, trust me, you won't miss out any of the marking points you've written. So that's the only difference you'll make from a person who has always been cramming the content but has not understood how to plan to bring out the content. So here we shall go through the question terms, stroke action verbs used in quest sections in section B. And we're going to go through all of them one by one. The first one is define, stroke what is. In questions which involve define or what is, here a precise meaning of a word stroke or term as we present the precise meaning of a word, and they should be concise. Okay. For example, they have asked the meaning of, let's say, genetic drift. Define the term genetic drift. It has 4 marks. Genetic drift, when you are defining it, means that you're going to bring out the key points in the genetic drift. Meaning you're going to say that genetic drift is the loss of alleles or is the change in allele frequency. Okay? Is the loss of alleles or the change of allele frequency in small populations by chance, not natural selection. Not you again going so much to explain those key terms I've said. Here you should present a definition with a lot of precision, but then it shouldn't lose its meaning. They can also come in that what is meant by. Here you're going to do what you have understood by that term. Here you have to give a definition plus additional information which is necessary. In this case, let's say you're defining gene flow. This is the movement of alleles into a population, or they can also leave the population as well. Meaning here you're going to attach the meaning of what happened. I mean, which term do we give to the genes or alleles leaving a population? Which term do we give to alleles joining a population? And then the third one there is describe or give an account of. Here details of main points using words or drawings to illustrate are required. Usually my colleagues will like saying that, should you see a question of describe and then you don't give an illustration, or you see a question of describe and then you're going like 4 paragraphs without an illustration, then there are higher chances that you're wrong. Usually describing, you must give an illustration in form of a drawing or is a flow of that information. When you're answering, these are the words you need when you're answering such questions. You can use words or shape. Maybe you're describing, okay? You're describing the structure of let's say you're describing the structure of, I'll give you the structure of maybe cell membrane. Here you must state its shape. And then you must also mention the main parts or subparts or components. And then the nature of those parts and the arrangement of such parts is important. And then begin stroke start. It consists of, or it is made up of. That's when you are describing, okay? You shouldn't have to start there starting with saying describe the structure of a plasma membrane according to fluid mosaic model. Then you start from, you start from the movement of materials, transmembrane and whatever. No, you should start by saying it consists of mainly proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. Okay, that is it. Or it is made up of proteins. It is mainly made up of proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. Okay. Then for questions that require you to describe a process, here the presentations require a logical flow of events in their natural sequence or order. They don't have to ask you to describe the process of let's say, the transmission, the synapse. And then you already end when the synapse has already, you start from the ions already before you start up from the real point when it comes up. So in this case of describing the process, please start from where it begins from to where it ends, actually in its natural way. Not starting, then you say that, I'm describing the protein synthesis. You start from amino acid activation. Then you said, no, but before amino acid activation, there was that one doesn't make sense. You should organize that content in its natural order, starting from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. Not starting from 5, then you bring 1, you bring 2. No, that one doesn't make sense. And also marking will stop where a distortion is cited. For example, someone has been flowing very well, has brought step 1, has brought step 2, then step 3 is wrong, but step 4 is correct. So you'll only score marks for step 1, step 2. Step 3, you're wrong, going downwards. And the take-home message is, as you revise, pay attention to the natural sequence of occurrences of events of biological processes. Meaning, before you go for your paper, I clearly say put the biological process the other side. Meaning, before you go for any paper, at least have some biological processes at hand. Have the respiration, the glycolysis and Krebs. Have some of them in nutrition. Okay? Have some of them in coordination, transmission of an impulse. Such that when you're going, when you find any of those ones, then you have something to attempt. Let's go to explaining stroke account for. Here you are expected to give a clear account, including either causes, reasons for what caused it, or the mechanisms. Here I gave an example of explain how C4 plants avoid photorespiration. Okay? In this case, when you're answering this question, these are the questions you must have asked yourself. Why? Why avoid the photorespiration? What is the meaning of photorespiration? Give examples where necessary. Explain the aspect, how it occurs, where it occurs, and then there is also this last one of correct use of biological terms, also earning marks. There are some people, for example, we are talking about, I'm sorry, I try to divert from C4 plants. Let's say we are talking about the effect of the phytochrome system on flowering in long day plants. And in this case, when you're explaining, we usually use the words promoting or inhibiting. So you're talking about an interruption. A long day plant, it has been interrupted by flashes of light in the night. Then they ask you that, what is the effect of flashing red light in the night on the flowering of a long day plant? In that case, someone, instead of answering why, they don't, instead of using the keywords of whether it promotes flowering or it inhibits flowering, someone says that it brings flowering. That is a wrong biological word. Someone says it stops or it prevents flowering. That is a wrong biological word. The correct biological word is either interruptions of flashes of red light promote flowering in long day plants. Why? Because flashing red light in long day plants converts phytochrome red to phytochrome far red that promotes flowering in long day plants. You're using correct biological terms to answer such a question. But should you use a word that is not biological, then it puts you at the other negative end of losing marks. So we got the next one of distinguish, stroke, or differentiate. How does this differ from that? All those are the way they can ask those questions. When marks given are 2, just define and use the word whereas or while. I often like learners using while than whereas. Why? Because the majority of them can write well or as instead of whereas. So the best one to do is while. When they have asked and they have given their very few marks, simply differentiate or distinguish by using the word while. So if marks exceed 2, i.e. there are 4, 5, 6, etc., give differences in a table form with rhyming stroke complementary answers matching answers. This is what it means. For example, they have asked that give the structural difference between DNA and RNA. Then in this side, you've drawn your table. It must be a T table, of course. Then you've put, and then in that T table, I will try to illustrate how that is done using the annotation tool. So the t-table is like this. We are assuming our question was, they have asked you that give the structural difference between DNA and RNA. In this case, you must draw a t-table. A t-table looks like this. That's a t-table. And then when you're writing, they ask you that what is the, describe the, state the differences between the structure of DNA and RNA. Majority of you shall just simply come here and put here DNA. Then you come and put here RNA. Now you do like that and you say, nah, this one is very easy for me. Then you come and list them here. You list the first one, second one, third one, fourth one. Now that one shall be wrong because they said the structure of DNA. For you, have simply put here that DNA. That is wrong. Instead, come here and write that. Structure of DNA. Then here structure of RNA. Okay. Then when you come here, put here, let's say you put here double-stranded. This side it should also be single-stranded, not putting here double-stranded. Then you come and put here that, let's say you put here double-stranded, then you come and put here that has, let's say you come here, you put that has oxygen at carbon atom. Those ones are not complementary. When you put here double-stranded, then you must come and put this side single-stranded. Okay? So that's what I meant. And then we proceed. So then the next part is compare. For comparing, you give similarities. And when you're giving similarities, you start with both or in both. Then secondly, you also give differences. In this case, you use a table, therefore. So you compare the difference is related to distinguish, stroke, differentiate. I've already told you how to give differences there in case of using a t-table. But you can also similarly use the while. But in this case, the difference between distinguish and and compare is, for distinguishing, you might give a definition of the terms. Okay? For example, that's you to distinguish between transcription and translation. You simply define transcription, while you define also translation. But for comparing, you must give similarities and differences. When you're giving similarities, you start with both or in both. When you're giving differences, you can make a table, in which case it will be a T table. But also you can similarly state the differences by using while. Okay, just a moment. Okay, the next one is discuss. Here you're expected to give an account where necessary for a range of arguments, e.g., you discuss the factors that affect the rate of transpiration. meaning you're going to state the effect of humidity. You're going to state the effect of temperature. You're going to explain the effect of, like, all those ones, but you discuss them. Meaning, for the case of humidity, you're going to say that during high levels of humidity, the rate of transpiration is low. During low rates of humidity, the transpiration rate is high. Of course, attaching some explanations. In this case, give both sides stroke stands, e.g., increase in temperature, stroke or decrease in temperature. I was meaning, just like for humidity, you don't simply say that humidity as a point or as a factor. Then you discuss only when the humidity levels are high. No, but rather you'll talk about when the humidity levels are high, its effect, then when the humidity levels are low and its effect. And then avoid wrong use of words, i.e., when temperature is high, because high is descriptive word. Okay? Don't use the words wrongly. Okay? For example, said when the temperature is high. I think when you're defining the temperature, define it as temperature is the hotness or coldness of an area. Okay? So instead of saying that when the temperature is high, rather say that when the temperature increases. Okay? Or increase stroke or decrease in the temperature leads to, okay? Instead of saying that when the temperature is high, maybe the what such and such is high. Then the next one is justify. Here you are expected to pass judgment on a given material, i.e., account for why it is necessary. Justify the need for circulatory system in large organisms. In this case, meaning you should bring a clear biological judgment of why it is needed. For example, large animals have a reduced surface area to volume ratio. And therefore, you're justifying why they need a circulatory system. You'll first let me prevent annotations. All right. Okay. Okay, so justify you have done it. You state why something is important. And then the last one is outline. Outline here, you just give the main points. Do not give details or references. Here we shall check the case of UNEB 2011, number 6, part A. We can also check UNEB 2014, number 3, part B. Okay, maybe we shall talk about this in the last part. And that's when you'll ask, I have seen Isma has asked that, how can I access the PDF? We shall talk about all that. And then, so those are the main parts. You can try out those questions. They require you to outline. UNEB 2011, number 6, part A. UNEB 2014, number 3, part B. And UNEB 2016, number 6, part B. Those ones do not require any details. Okay? So let's go to the how to write an essay, a quality essay for paper 2, mainly section B. Quality biology essay is built on 8 things, stroke standards, which include how means the handwriting, how do you write? Much as you want to become a doctor, because that's the aspiration of most people who do biology. Much as you said doctors must write badly, but here you're writing to a teacher. So you must write in the best of the handwriting you have ever had on earth. Secondly, you must know the scope. Where do I start? Where do I end? Thirdly, you must know the sequence of your essay. Start with answers that you understand best. then end with the answers you feel you're not having enough content. Then symbols, and also here avoid abbreviations unless you've written it in the first stage. But where need be, don't write abbreviations. And those people who start with writing FSH straight from the first point, thinking the person who said knew it, that is wrong. Write those words in full. Avoid abbreviations. Then wordings. Use proper words, like we've already hinted on that. And then rubric, please. We're also going to talk about that rubric in detail and how it can affect your scoring. Then preparation. I say that always, please make a content map of what is needed for a particular question. Then lastly, drawings or diagram. Where necessary, attach them there to avoid any errors that may arise. Let's go into the details of what is needed. We'll start with the diagrams. Now, these ones directly called for. For example, they start by saying that with the help stroke aid of a diagram. This one means that in this case, you can't escape that question without a drawing. They said with the help or with the aid of a diagram, describe the structure of the stoma. Okay? Meaning in that case, you must draw the guard cells. There's no you'll answer and you pass that question without drawing that. Sometimes they can be indirectly called for. In the case where I said, describe the structure of hemoglobin. Meaning, describe the structure of hemoglobin. It means that in such a question, much as they have not asked for, you must make that drawing. I gave the case of the question of 2011, number 2, part A. So that scope, that question, and that one is also very important. And just like we said, for questions of describe, you might be very wrong if you write for more than 4 paragraphs and you're not having an illustration in mind to simply describe what you're writing. Always check yourself. And then the second part is the scope. For scope, you start with where to start, stroke to begin from. You must be knowing. For a particular question, you must understand where to start or begin, what to write, where to end, and how to start. That's why I said it is very important to draw a content map. That's the only difference you will make from the person who has not attended this session. Content map is very important because it will guide you on what is needed on this question, how must I stop, how must I end. We go to wording. Do not substitute biological words with English words. I already said that earlier on. For you, they are talking about promoting flowering. You want to say that leads to flowering. You want to say that inhibits. For you want to say that stopping. Use the best required biological words. Also, wrong use of biological words, e.g. UNEB 2010, 2012, and 2013. Those ones, people were using wrong biological words because they were there was a question of homeostasis, a number 1 question, where people were using very wrong biological words to attempt such questions. And should you use a wrong biological word, it means that it will take so long to reach to the key point. Remember, I said that in biology, you must be precise but concise. So the more you write, the more errors you make, thus deviating you from getting the best of that mark. Then a biological word with wrong spelling. There are those people who also don't practice spellings of words. We are talking about, let's say, the pituitary gland. You write it wrongly. In such a case, there is no you can score. Okay? The only way you can score is if you write a biological word with its correct biological spelling. Then words, and there are also misuse of these words. Helps, acts, assists, enables are not needed. For example, someone writes that, let's say that iron at the center of hemoglobin helps. Iron at the center of hemoglobin acts as. assists, enables, those ones are not needed. Rather, just make something very simple. Let's say I asked you that state the adaptation is of an alveoli as a respiratory site. Simply say moist to dissolve gases, thin to shorten the distance over which diffusion of gases takes place. Instead of saying that short, I mean is moist to help in, no, okay? Rather use for, to instead. Also, there is also dodging biological words. There are some people, because they don't know the spelling, or those people who don't do a content map, they will just do dry run, skipping some of those parts. That one is not good. Let's go to rubric. Rubric of each question, e.g., state any 3 physiological adaptations. For instead of writing physiological adaptations, you go and write structural adaptations. There you have gone offside. Rubric of the paper, e.g., answer or attempt any 3 questions in section B. For you that have said attempt any 3, you attempt 4. They will mark the first 3, much as the other 4th one is done, you were trusting so much, they will not mark it. So you must follow instructions and read and understand the question properly well. Then the next one is sequence. A strict order of flow of events is required, i.e., the chronology of events in their natural order of occurrence. E.g., I've given the case of UNEB 2014 question 3. They have asked you to describe a particular process, and then for you simply skip. You don't bring the points in their correct order. We gave an example of you're describing, let's say, the light dependent stage of photosynthesis. For you, before talking about the chlorophyll, the photon of light striking the chlorophyll molecule, you automatically start from the electron transport system. That is wrong. You should follow the correct flow of sequence for the question. For the events. Describe the here it was describe the hormonal interactions from conception to birth. Then for you start from menstruation, start from estrogen, and then you go to progesterone. By the time you reach where you must start from, you're already tired. So you even just end at implantation. By doing that, you've not answered the question, but you've answered it your own way, which is wrong. Then another important part is preparation, using the question paper. Plan for all the 3 questions you want to answer in section B. Start read the first 5 questions and then summarize. How many marks can I obtain from this? Be honest with yourself. Don't answer because you've been leading discussion groups and have been saying that you're very good at population genetics. You meet a question. This question has it is number 3. Part A is having 6 marks. Well, you can get the 6 marks. Part B has 14 marks. You can only get maybe 2 out of the 14. But because they know you as the person who is always discussing population genetics and you're best at it, you want to die with it. You leave out the coordination, which is very easy, that you could obtain even maybe 14 plus marks. In that case, first prepare and be honest with yourself. See if you can really obtain the marks from that particular question. As we are coming to the end, we shall go through the special notes on previous years. We shall check UNEB 2016, question 1. It was very bulky. It is the question which was talking about ecology. It had 3 graphs. In this case, this question had a very bulky introduction, and majority of the people fear reading. So because you fear reading, you will simply run through very fast and you will not understand what is required of you. Therefore, you will easily misfire. It also had 3 different graphs with each having 2 curves and no figures. Majority of you are trained to answer graphs using the x-axis that is having figures. So in this case, because the other graph didn't have any figures, many people had issues with answering. And then most notable, parts A, B, and C only needed a study of introduction and data to score. And those three parts were having about 29. I mean, actually, they were having 29 out of 40. You see, if you had failed to read the introduction in that question 1 of 2016, your chances of getting 10 were very high. And you could leave the 30 marks with the examiner. That's why we said for any part of the question, please, it is your day, so you have to take time reading everything on the question paper with a lot of diligence. And then most notable, then extra phrase, ecological effects of water hyacinth in Uganda. And this one made people lose the marks, ecological effects of water hyacinth in Uganda. Here, the thing was ecological effects. Okay? So meaning, when someone puts that water hyacinths hinder transport on the lake, is that ecological? So here, that's why I said you must take note of the biological terms used in a particular question. Then we also had biological control of weeds. This one also do it under ecology usually. And it was also another area which brought a lot of stagger, because most of the people don't understand the biological control of weeds, where we use the predators for a particular weed to check its population. And then another one was UNEB 2015. Question is from movement in and out of the cell. That question had simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. In that case, they drew a graph, and on that graph, the two curves, none of them reached the maximum. But they asked you to compare, meaning majority of the learners had put maybe facilitated diffusion reaches the maximum, while simple diffusion does not reach a maximum. In that case, you are wrong, because none of the graphs reached the maximum. They drew the maximum at the top there, and none of the curves reached the maximum. So it was very wrong for you to use maximum as a description point, more so when you're describing or stating differences or giving similarities for such curves during comparison. Another one was UNEB 2014. This one was on homeostasis. And this one was the most failed. Why? Because there was need to continuously review that idea. Most of the people misfired because of the wrong use of the biological terms. Okay, St. Pader, S.6 Busunju. Please, I will spare some time for question and answer, so don't mind, unless you're not getting me well. So it also involved the positive and negative figures on the axis, and this one is the one which messes up people properly well when the curves have the positive and the negative. They fail to describe them, and they get phobia more so when they have the negatives on their curves. Another case is for the UNEB 2010 and 12 and 13. Here, students misuse the biological word hydrolysis. They didn't understand what it means, or they used it wrongly. And then UNEB 2011 was highly failed also. Students did not understand or know how to compare, something where I think I've already talked about it, explain differences, and also they needed to review the introduction. Because most people often don't go through the introduction. Majority of the learners just skip the introduction in most cases. Others, finally, as we come to the end, you have to choose questions according to the tasks required. Okay? Describe mechanisms, explain, give a clear account, stroke, reasons. I've already talked about that. Choose questions according to your abilities of answers you know. Don't choose a question that you're going to fail simply because your friends are always saying that you're the best in this area. Don't. Choose according to the answers you know. Also, number of answers you know is important. Like we said, a question needs 20, it has 20 marks. It is involving steps of protein synthesis, but you only know transcription. And in that case, maybe transcription is going to account for about 8 marks. Then why should you die with it? You better attempt a question that you know you have more ideas, unless otherwise. Draw a diagram where it is necessary. For mainly structures, describing, the diagram is always necessary. But of course, in biology, you shall call it a drawing. Always you follow the principles of the drawing more so when you're using them to describe. This one is mostly for descriptions and use any correct illustrations. So at that rate, I come to the end of the presentation for today. So at this rate, I will allow any questions. So I'll allow for any questions at this rate. I'll check through the chat box. I have how can one access the PDF? Maybe I'll share it. But most importantly, this information is going to be put on YouTube on Holistic Learning Platform. I know you'll be able to access it. Maybe we shall share the links with you in your WhatsApp groups. Okay, let me only hope I'm able to unmute. Okay, it is the host, Mr. Kazi, was supposed to unmute. I hope when he's online. But for the meanwhile, as wait for him, you can type your message in the chat box and then I can respond to it. I'm waiting. I have Lubugumu Jamia High School. I have Arua Secondary School, Aduku SS. You can type all those messages there in the chat room, then I can respond to them. All right. Lubugumu Jamia has asked that is one allowed to, okay, no, I'll start with the Padre Pio SS. Is it fine to organize my paper starting from section B? It is very fine, please. You can start from any part of the paper. Much as I usually advise people to start from, but you can start from number 1. It's about you, okay? I'll not really say that you have to start from here. You can start from anywhere. Is one allowed to write a heading on the? Maybe you'll complete that. How can I use the word contrast in section B? In contrast. Contrast. Contrast is more of giving differences, eh? And then Kisita has asked that major steps involved in blood clotting. Okay, we shall go through it maybe. Then for describing the structure diagram, is the first or last? Now, there is usually a common question of asking whether when you have drawn a structure, do you go ahead to explain? Now, usually, after you drawing the structure, you can still go ahead to write a simple, description. Why? Because there are some things you might not actually describe in a drawing. That's why there might be need for you to add some written information after the drawing or before the drawing. I'm Martha from Naumali. How best do I deal with questions with account 4? I didn't get it well. Account 4, we say that you give an explanation of the events. I'll share this PDF with you also such that you can follow it up properly. Kisita said that blood clotting, maybe I'll handle it. Let me first handle the ones we have been handling. For describing the structure, I think I've talked about that. So where can we get the new updated biology book by NCDC? These books are already updated on the NCDC website, so you can check them out there. Is control breathing and respiration the same? Now, breathing is ventilation. Respiration is different. Okay? Breathing is ventilation, meaning you're describing the ventilation, how gases are moved in and out, the interaction of the intercostal muscles, lungs, diaphragm, and the chest region. While respiration is the process of combining the oxygen with the glucose to make energy. And that one usually takes place in the two steps, the glycolysis and the Krebs cycles. Please help me explain on how to answer questions about relationships and effects. Okay, I will handle that, maybe. So what do physiological significance of Bohr effect? Physiological significance of Bohr effect. This one enables the, of course, remember I said the hemoglobin readily picks oxygen at high oxygen tensions, okay? And also releases oxygen at low oxygen tensions. So the Bohr effect is the lowering of the oxygen saturation curve, okay? And its movement to the right to readily release the oxygen in those areas where there is a high concentration of carbon dioxide. The physiological importance to enable such cells which are having high concentration of carbon dioxide and with a low concentration of oxygen to also receive oxygen to carry out respiration. Martha from Naumali High School, how best do I deal with the questions of account 4? I think I handled that. Is one allowed to put a heading on the drawing during description? We shall only put headings on drawings, yes. Like there we shall follow the exactly of the way we handle drawings. Put a heading, you draw it, if possible you can put the magnification. It is okay. You should do it the same way. And then also draw it using a pencil. Sir, may we get to understand the difference between maximum and peak? Okay, I think I'll briefly take you through that. I have some slides there. I think we shall use the next 10 minutes to do that. So what about paper 3? Paper 3 we shall post. We have paper 2, paper 1 and paper 2 pending. So we shall possibly schedule up another time to go through them. How can one access the PDF? I will share it. Any questions of photosynthesis? Is it allowed to use abbreviations, e.g. RUBIP? No. We agree that you must write them in full. Sir, may you please break for us the meaning of the ecological? Ecological means, like the definition of ecology, the interaction is of the environment, okay? Of course, mainly the biotic and the abiotic. We always start by stating those biotic factors and abiotic factors. Now, in that case, when they said the ecological effect of water hyacinth, you putting there factors like water hyacinth hinders transport of ships. Those ones are not ecological, okay? But rather, we need to say that water hyacinth shall hinder penetration of light into the lake or into the river, therefore lowering photosynthetic activities in the water system. By lowering the photosynthetic activities, you're lowering the net primary productivity of plants. Okay? That is the ecological effect. not the transport. How best to identify the basic topics in section A? Think section A is also another part to handle as it. Maybe I'll briefly take you through. But the good thing is we have a YouTube video on data analysis of Senior 6 on YouTube. So you can definitely get that link and then you can follow up. What about questions of account for and contrast? What does it mean? Account for means you get an explanation. Contrast means you get differences and similarities. Assuming that in a question that has part A and B, do you know part B compared to part A, can you start with part B before A? That one is fully allowed as long as you've indicated there that this is part B. It has no problem with it. More response on mechanisms to relationships. I think we shall do that. I'm going to spare some like 10 minutes to go through that before we reach the end. Is one allowed to use a table when writing differences for a graphical question? We shall talk about this. I think we shall briefly go through this. It is good to use a table, but you must use a T-table. Sir, what about guide to paper 3? We shall do that. So, okay, how best can we do to pass objective questions? That is the paper 1. So how can one account for the formation of 38 ATPs? That is respiration. Male gametes and pollen grains, are they the same in plants? No, of course they are not. We can talk about that one under reproduction. They are formed differently. Oh, what did I get the question right? You said male gametes and pollen grains, are they the same? I don't know. I don't know if I got it well. What is the best way of stating a heading for a question? I think we shall do that. How to answer questions that require the annotated diagrams. Okay. Okay, I see the question is a bit many. Let me first take you through this. Now, I wanted us to go through, someone asked about how to write titles. We are going to do all this. But the good thing, like I said, is all this information is on YouTube, so you can get it at any material time. We discussed how to get the bar graphs and all others. So I'll simply answer the questions which have been asked there. Okay. I want to take you through how to write the differences. I mean, how to give relationships. Okay, there we are. So for relationships, we start with the range, stroke of the independent factor, and its units, and write statement. And the words we use are words like as. What do we mean? For example, they have said that this is a graph of transport. We are talking about the T4 cells or T4 lymphocytes, and then the HIV particles. They have asked that describe the relationship between the HIV particles and the T4 lymphocytes. In this case, when you're answering that question, you should start with as, and then you quote the independent factor. For example, as the T4 lymphocytes increase, comma, the HIV particles decrease. That is the relationship. Or as well, you can say when when T lymphocytes increase, comma, the HIV particles decrease. Just as simple as that. But I often like you using as. So I simply say as HIV particles decrease, comma, the T4 lymphocytes decrease. If there are one else that describe the relationship, then you have to end there. However, if you say that explain the relationship, then you start by describing. For example, as the HIV particles increase, the T lymphocytes decrease. Okay? I'm sorry I've not got a question to use, but that's the way we state it. Though sometimes they are related with, I've given there one, relationship is between two things, e.g., between 3 minutes and 8 minutes. In A, the rate of reaction increases gradually, while in B, the rate of reaction increases rapidly. That is when we are using while. I even given a good example there. But we can also use as. Okay? This one, sometimes it is related with effect. Now, for effect, you look at the effects only with reference to the x-axis. For example, let's assume it is the effect of light on the rate of photosynthesis. In this case, you say that increasing the light intensity, in this case, light is on the x-axis, and the rate of photosynthesis is on the y-axis. So you say that on the state the effect of light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis. You will say that increasing the light intensity from, let's say, 1 to 10 parts per million, it leads to increase in the rate of photosynthesis. Okay? So that's the way we state it. So I don't know if you've got something, but however, I will share with you the links to these YouTube videos, and then you can definitely attempt them and then get the better understanding of it. There was another question on someone asked about on account for, that's what we do. You state trends, change, stroke of variation, patterns, like that. And then if it is the effect, you should describe the effect followed by the reason. If it is relationship, you should describe the range. For example, between 8 minutes to 9 minutes, as HIV, as T lymphocytes increase, the HIV particles decrease, because T lymphocytes increase and therefore engulfing or neutralizing or opsonizing the HIV particles and therefore reducing their number. There's someone wants to know how to get the graph titles. I'm looking for if there is any part that can handle that. Okay, I want to find if there is any part which we can use to get that title. I know it must be part of this. Okay, the title is there. When to write the title. When you're writing the title, For example, I'll write a title starting from the left to the right hand side. At the top, and then it must be brief, specific, and complete with facts represented. Ignore units of measurements in the title. For example, you're plotting a graph of concentration with time. Then you set a graph of concentration in millimeters, maybe in 1 milligram, something of that kind. Like you should not put units in the title. And then I've given you an example there, graph of changes. You start with the dependent variable, then you end with the independent variable. Okay? Graph of changes in dependent variable with independent variable. For example, graph of rate of enzyme reaction at varying temperature. Graph of changes in temperature at different hours of the day. Okay, I see there are still more questions here. Good day from Navmali, meaning of compare and contrast. I hope I've handled that. Compare and contrast, you give similarities and differences. Describe the relationship between polypeptide and genes. Now, a polypeptide, the genes are a bit of in the nucleus. Okay. Describe the relationship between polypeptides and genes. Meaning in this case, you're going to describe the protein synthesis from the nucleus to when they reach the cytoplasm. Okay, you're going to start from the unwinding of the DNA by helicase, polymerase coming in, then the coding, the cistron and all those things until it leaves the nucleus through the nuclear pore, like that, until it forms a polypeptide. And relationship between genes and polypeptide description, that's the protein synthesis. Sir, I don't understand well on how to make the content map. First, highlight more. Here I was meaning, if they're asking you to describe the factors that affect the rate of transpiration, for example, here, they'll put here 12 marks, meaning you should at least be having 4 factors. Now, when you have got your 4 factors, okay, try to reach out. How many marks must I get from one factor? Let's say it is temperature. Temperature is divided into increased temperature and decreased temperature. What's the effect of increased temperature? Let's say increased rate of transpiration. What's the effect of decreased temperature? So when you're writing, you must write your point capturing all those effects so that you can score all the marks out of that point. That's what we mean by content map. Then you've moved to humidity. Humidity, we have decreased humidity levels and increased humidity levels. What's the effect of increased humidity levels? Low rate of transpiration. What's the effect of decreased humidity levels? Then increased rate of transpiration. So, but when you write, you'll not miss out on any key point of that question. That's what we mean by a content map. You simply generate the key points that are needed for that question. How is the structure of protein related to their functions? Now, in this case, we meaning how many structures of proteins do we have? We have the primary structure, we have the secondary structure, tertiary, and quaternary. So you're going to relate to what makes primary structures perform their functions using an example. Say primary structures are made up of a sequence of amino acids gained by peptide bonds. Therefore, they are highly specific, meaning these ones are the ones responsible for making parts like of enzymes. You should give an example. Secondary proteins, these ones have beta pleated sheets, for example, keratin, and that one leads to its role of protection, like that, okay? And then how can we answer the question of justify? I think I talked about that. I said you analyze and then you relate a structure, maybe with its importance or how important some process is to that particular aspect which has been asked for. What happens when one answers a descriptive question without a diagram, since some of the diagrams are complex to draw? And I didn't say that you can be penalized. If you can write down your flow very well, it is okay. But putting in an illustration can save you from the wrong words you've written in the essay can be equally scored for in the illustration. That's why I said it is better to use the illustration because you stand more chances of being scored right. Is it advisable that when I'm describing a process, I use diagrams or arrows leading to the next process? That one is very good. You can do it. Please, sir, may you give us some explanation about hormonal interactions from conception to birth? I'll simply maybe give you an overview. Usually we have, of course, usually it is the estrogen which prepares the menstruation, okay, preparing for the next menstruation. But in this case of after pregnancy, the estrogen is no longer working. It is the progesterone. Progesterone is made by the corpus luteum, okay, and it is responsible for maintaining the pregnancy. High levels of progesterone shall inhibit the making of luteinizing hormone from the pituitary gland. So the presence of progesterone shall maintain the pregnancy. And of course, other hormones which shall be made during the pregnancy shall be hormones like. Now, after, of course, progesterone being made by the corpus luteum, as the uterus continues to develop, the role of the making of the progesterone shall be taken on by the placenta when the placenta has well developed. Then also you have the making of prolactin. Prolactin is stimulated right from the hypothalamus by prolactin releasing factors that stimulate the anterior pituitary gland to make prolactin stimulating hormone, which shall come and make which makes prolactin direct from the pituitary gland. Okay. And then the role of prolactin, of course, to induce milk secretion. This one often comes in the 7th month going on. Then we also have oxytocin coming in at the last point. This one is made by the hypothalamus, but it is stored in the posterior pituitary gland. And this one, of course, is the one responsible for the contractions of the uterine lining to bring out the baby. Of course, this one is short-lived. Okay, that is short-lived, and it is the one which causes birth. So it is a bit of, there are many hormonal interactions involved that we might not touch all of them, but the main ones are progesterone, prolactin, and then of course you have the HCG and all others that you can relate. I know the time is not enough for us to do that. So is the process of control ventilation the same as gaseous exchange? Yes, it is the same. If a question requires a description, can I just draw, please? Please draw and attach some statements, because there are some things which you can describe in the drawing. Countercurrent effect in homeostasis. The negative feedback loop, no, the time is not enough really. So how ARVs help in control of HIV, stroke, AIDS? Please, I know the question is a real so many. I'm sorry I'll not exhaust a lot of them. But however, this session is going to be recorded. Maybe we shall coordinate with the holistic e-learning platform, and we shall possibly schedule up another session for this. Usually for sessions like this, usually the 2 hours are not enough to capture everything. But I know next time we shall make it better and greater by attempting or trying to answer all these questions. So it's already 6, the time we are supposed to stop. And therefore, at this rate, I'll request, I don't know if the host is on, can let someone give us a closing prayer. I didn't give the opening prayer because the time I'd planned for the prayer, it was already used up because of the delays in the unmuting. So I'll request one person to give us a closing prayer. We shall try to answer these questions in the coming sessions. Otherwise, I appreciate the holistic e-learning platform and everyone who has endeavored to come through for this session. I request you to keep joining for any other sessions as we make it better and we improve it to solve our problems so that all information can reach everyone. I really thank everyone for coming through. So if the can make it, then maybe would unmute one person to give us a closing prayer. Okay, it's well. It's like okay, it's like the host is not okay. I think it's not able to unmute. So please, I know we can just have a moment of silence to pray. All right, let's pray and believe. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. Please see you next time, please. Thank you.